Welcome to the Central Church of Christ. We're glad to have you here this morning. Our study today is from the book of Proverbs. Some announcements before we begin the actual study portion. Evangelism card writing team 4 meets this evening after services in the library. The summer series is continuing, and if you'd like to take one of the speakers out to dinner, there is a sign-up sheet. The Potter's Children's Home Silver for Children campaign is going on, and there's still cans out there available if you'd like to do that. The deadline for bringing them back is the middle of July. That may seem like a long time away, but as some of you've already learned, the older you get, the faster the clock spins, and so that will be coming up pretty shortly. We've got the McCracken County Fair outreach going on this week, starting on Tuesday the 25th and going through Saturday the 27th. If you can help, please see Matt McDougall on that. Next Sunday the 30th will be Church Eat Church, a Sunday afternoon. Services that day will begin at 1 p.m. A housekeeping chore for in here. There is one handout for the course, and there's a list of 20 items, and there's still a few of those here on the corner end of this pew on your right. If you didn't get one of those a couple of Sundays ago or last Sunday, you're welcome to one of those. If you haven't already, please be turning to Proverbs 1. In the early part of this study, as we look at the introduction, as it were, to the book of Proverbs, you see various types of learning or instruction. And there are fine distinctions, but definitely there are distinctions between the categories that are mentioned there. For example, wisdom, instruction, understanding. All of these are at different levels of a continuum that are areas for us to grow and strive to reach or enhance in our lives. Verse 5, let the wise hear and increase in learning. I urge all of us to remember that part of our goal as Christians is to grow, that we aren't to stagnate. You can tell me I'm wrong, and as I've mentioned so many times, I'm accustomed to it, and it just, that's again, it gets worse with age, but there are periods of time. This is not an onward and upward movement. It just doesn't work that way in most people's lives. It's more like a graph of the stock market. Hopefully a stock market that is booming, but it's a series of zigzags where there are peaks and valleys. And some of that's determined by circumstances in our lives, and some of it is just the fatigue that we're experiencing at different points in our life and the stresses of life, I think. But we're looking to grow. We're reminded in the book of Hebrews that you've been around a while, you shouldn't be drinking just milk, that it's time for meat. Don't go down the road of, okay, but I'm a vegan, no, we're not talking about that. But you get the message. The message is we don't eat baby food our entire life. I'm not even sure they had baby food back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and I was a baby. But if they did, I don't remember it. But just, I think, bless their hearts every time I see one of those things opened, and the stuff coming out of it. Just, it doesn't look good. It just doesn't have any appeal. And it shouldn't have any appeal for us spiritually. We need to be growing. We need to move forward. There is a theme, and you'll find that theme repeated, by the way, throughout the book. You won't notice that so much in our study because we won't get that far. But occasionally this verse, maybe in these words or in very similar words, will come up again and again when you look at the verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Fear not as in shaking your boots terror. That's not what God wants from us. But He does want respect. He demands it. He will have it. There is a reminder of that when we're told about Judgment Day, when every knee will bow. That not only includes folks like us that acknowledge God and are trying to worship Him and please Him, but it includes those people who are scoffing at God, who are making fun of the idea that there even is a God, who just basically ridicule the whole notion of anybody trying to worship somebody that you can't see anyhow. So basically, respect is what's being looked at here. A healthy fear of God means that we give Him awe. That's not quite the same as respect. It's that awe that I mentioned. It's just my favorite example that old people repeat themselves. Old people repeat themselves. Uh, old people repeat themselves. Uh, it's that awe that I feel when I stand outside at night. That's one of my favorite awesome experiences. Once in a while, maybe I haven't really stopped to look outside or be outside and enjoy it like I really should have. And I'll just step out on the patio and look up. And it's not the greatest view in the world. It's not the view that some of you have that live further away from the lights of town. And you can really, there was a sky in Bryce Canyon, and you're out in the middle of nowhere, or were at least. I don't know how developed it is now. Awesome. Many of you, I'm sure, have had experiences like that right here in West Kentucky, where you're away from the lights of surrounding ambient lights, and you can see what the sky really looks like. It's that fear of the Lord. A reminder about fools, because fools are mentioned a lot in Proverbs. You tend to see them contrasted with wisdom or compared with wisdom a lot of times. This is not someone who has no brain power. The one who is called a fool in scriptures is the one who basically is arrogant and self-contained and proud of themselves and does not acknowledge God in their life. The best example that I can think of that offhand is the one that's described in the scriptures as the rich fool. Now, this man surely was astute because from an economic point of view, he was highly successful. He was doing well. I don't think he was just some guy out there bumbling and fumbling around who had no clue about how to make money. He knew how to make money in the best way. So what will I do with my abundance? I'll tear down my barns and I'll build bigger barns, and I will. And then God says to him, "Thou fool. This night I require your soul." Now tell me, who's all this stuff going to belong to that you think you had? That's the fool that's being referred to in the book of Proverbs. Not someone who has a low IQ or they don't have any life skills or anything like that. So keep that in mind as we continue to look at this concept here. Let's look at verse 8. "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching." You see that introduction to a lot of different passages in the book of Proverbs. It's a theme of the book over and over again. And there's a lesson there. The lesson basically is the source of instruction and wisdom initially. Of course, God is the ultimate source. But on an everyday living level, the source needs to be the parent. It's expected that it be the parent. My mother had a third grade education. My father had an eighth grade education. I can assure you that they were wise. They lacked formal book learning. This has nothing to do with that. I keep reminding you, just like white hair and wrinkles don't have anything to do with wise. There should be some correlation, though, by the way. If I haven't got more sense now than I did when I was 20, I'm scared. I need to sit down because I had, looking back on it, it seems like no sense then. Parents are the source of wisdom and instruction. And the son is being instructed here. Remember what we said earlier about he who has ears to hear, let him hear. That admonition is repeated over and over and over again through the scriptures, isn't it? And in case you hadn't already studied on your own in that particular realm, I reminded you that it's not like it might seem to be. It's not like you have my permission to listen. It's not permissive. It's a direct, blunt command. If you got ears, you better be paying attention, would be a very apt translation of what that expression means. And so here, the son is admonished to hear the instruction of their parents. From verse 10 through 19, there is a description of an event, and this is again a common technique in the book of Proverbs. And it talks about loping along through life, happy as a lark, and then being blindsided, as it were, by sin. And how that works. So let's look at a couple of key spots there. In verse 10, my son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. Far be it from me to edit the Holy Spirit's instruction. But I'm inclined to think in the real world, if could be changed to when. Because it's going to happen. It's not like if perchance, to use an outdated expression, there's going to come a time when you're going to be enticed by sin. Okay. There are names in a lot of realms for people like me, but there is probably a name for somebody like me who looks ahead. I spend about as much time looking ahead as I do where I am, probably. I think if you sort of plan ahead for moments like is being described here, when the moment comes, you, as my expression is, as it were, you play your program. You've got like muscle memory in an athlete. You respond because you've already thought through it and you know how you're going to handle it. So, okay, here is temptation. Sinners are enticing you, and they're not just like, okay, we're kind of, as we like to minimize, they're not guys that have told a little white lie hither and thither. Oh, these are nasty guys. In our culture, we might even call them gangs. You know, these are a bunch of thugs, hooligans, hoodlums. When you see the description, let us ambush the innocent without reason. That one phrase tells you what their mindset is. Verse 15, My son, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths. Stay away from obvious trouble. You recall when we looked in the introduction to this about the themes from the book, and that one of those themes was be careful who you hang around. Watch your companions. This is just one of those references to that kind of thing. That's what's going on here. Pay attention to who you're around. And that's especially true, no offense to the younger ones in here, but it's especially true of younger people. I know there are geezers like me that are really wrapped up in what other people think about them. My nature has been such that I've never really been all that much concerned one way or the other. I mean, I don't want you to hate me. I'd rather you not yell and holler at me unless it's supper's ready, or something like that. That's okay. But, the thing of it is, we don't need to be all that concerned about how we fit in with our society. If you are one of those folks, make sure that your little mini society, your little ecosystem is made up of good, solid people. Then you're not quite so likely to stray off into here and there and everywhere else. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Now, what's the deal here? If sinners entice you. Folks, we are not helpless victims where sin is concerned. You do realize that, Ron? You're not a helpless victim. Sin's out there and it's in massive barrages. But think about the idea that we're given in 1 Corinthians 10:13. We're told, okay, there's sin out there. You know the passage. I'll just remind you. It's the one that says something about there's a way out of every temptation. God's not going to provide any temptation without you having a way of escape. So maybe there needs to be a little PS here in our minds. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. Get busy looking for the escape route. Because God assures you that it's there. There is a way out of this. So instead of me wallowing in that sin and saying, well, this looks pretty good, this feels pretty good, I'm kind of soaking this up, instead run like crazy. There are two methods of approach, as I understand it, for dealing with sin as far as Bible instruction goes. One is resist it, and one's run like crazy. And the one approach that definitely does not work, that's right on the bottom, is hang around and wallow in it. Now, when I think of the word wallow, you've got an image now. I'm thinking of pigs in mud. We don't want that as our image. That's not what we're wanting. Hold back your foot from their paths, for their feet run to evil. They're eager. These hoodlums are eager to get into it. They didn't just kind of like, okay, this is, to use the jargon of our day, this is not a crime of opportunity. This isn't an accident. This is like, again, using legal jargon, this is like premeditated murder. This is what they're looking for. This is what they want. There's an insult that in verse 17 that you might not think about. Here's an instruction. I almost never give instructions or assignments in class. But here's one for you. If you want an assignment, here's an assignment. Every day till you run out of time or Proverbs, read one Proverbs. I'll tell you the way that we should not try to do this. We should not try reading Proverbs a chapter at a time or 5 chapters at a time. Read one proverb for that day and think about that proverb. These are compact little gems of ultra high quality. And you're not going to get very much out of them, I don't think, unless you spend some time thinking about it. They're meant for thinkers. And reading 7 to 15 to 20 in a chapter and thinking you're going to get much out of it, no, you're going to cover ground. Here, the goal is not to cover ground. The goal is to get wiser, right? Better one thought through than 21 covered. Look here in verse 17. I'm sure lots of you have seen this. A lot of what I'm doing, probably 90% of what I'm doing is not teaching. I'm just reminding you of stuff you already know. But look at this. This is sort of like graveyard humor to me, but it still has an element of humor to it. For in vain is a net spread in the sight of any bird. Okay. Plain West Kentucky language, Ron. If you got a bird problem and you spread a trap out there in front of them, they're going to watch you and they're going to think I'm dumb enough to go for that? But these men, that is, these evil people that are trying to entice you, lie in wait for their own blood. They set an ambush for their own lives. Shall I be crude about this? I think I shall. These are bird brains. These people are dumber than birds. Even birds know that they need to avoid a trap that's being set right there in front of them, yet these people are acting to their own detriment and don't have sense enough at one level, not because they're stupid. Is there a Bible word for that? I think we've already covered it a few times. And in their foolishness, they rush headlong. Proverbs is a book of choices. Almost always, you'll find in every chapter just about a book of choices. You can do it the wise way, or you can do it the foolish way. Man, I wish I avoided all the foolish ones. But with more study and more thought, we all can grow in that area. The next shift in theme starts with verse 20. Wisdom cries aloud in the street. In the market, she raises her voice. And at the head of the noisy street, she cries out. At the entrance of the city gates, she speaks. Wisdom is not out there hidden under some can or in some dark alleyway or obscure location. Wisdom is out there open and everywhere, in the alleyways, in the city gates. Hey, busiest place in town in those days were the city gates. People coming and going. It's where usually the town judges set up their thing for settling disputes. Trade booths. It's there. in the markets, in the noisy streets. Wisdom is out there screaming her head off. She's out there clear and available, and you can know where she is. And then all of a sudden there is this abrupt shift. How long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing and fools hate knowledge? Dissect all that for a minute. My 8th grade, oh, my 9th through 12th grade English teacher was the same person. She would be horrified at me many days. But one of the things she taught us to do, which will make sense to some of you of the right vintage, but from some of the younger, you'll think, what's he talking about? We were required to be able to break down sentences with this process called diagramming. You know, some of you remember, I see. You draw a line, a horizontal line. Here is the subject. Here is the verb. And underneath it are modifiers of different kinds. Well, let's break this one down. I like breaking things down because the simpler it is, the clearer it is to me. And the more likely I am to remember some of it. So let's break it down. This is very much like one of my favorite Psalms, not just for the message, because of its beautiful construction. Psalm 1 has that wonderful construction. When you break it down, remember Psalm 1, it talks about, the good guy and the bad guy. And it talks about the bad guy, kind of passing by trouble, and then he pauses and stands there and kind of looks at it, and then he sits down, makes himself at home. You got a progression. But with the good guy, that's not the way it is. He's like this. Well, that's kind of the way this short thing is. Let's take a look at it. We got 3 categories here. We've got simple ones. Again, don't be misled by that word simple. This is not talking about people that are just, okay, they're mentally deficient. They lack the capability to think through. There are people that they're more like mindless. They're oblivious. That's what these folks are like. We've got simple ones, then we've got scoffers. I'd suggest to you that our culture is filled with both of these. It used to be the scoffers I would have deemed to be a relatively small number. Now then, their numbers are massive. If you're one of those, think, oh, here's editorial opinion. So I'll scoot over a little closer to the edge. Editorial opinion. If you think that we are not living in a culture where there is persecution, you better wake yourself up. This is not a lot of India and other places where you can die on the spot. But this is no longer the scot-free world of my youth. It is not. This is becoming increasingly, at least monthly. I started to say daily. That might be hyperbole. But it's not hyperbole to say monthly, the stakes get higher. The envelope gets pushed a little more and a little more. Open your eyes if you have not already. This is not going to be a good world for your kids and grandkids as far as being a believer in Christ is concerned. Get them ready best you can, because it's outside our personal experience. Scoffers, people who basically ridicule, make fun of, and then we go to the ultimate level, the fool. So we got 3 categories here broken down. Okay? Descriptions for each one. The simple. They love being simple. They love it. They're simple deliberately, not because they lack capability to think, but ignorance is bliss. No, it's not. It's deadly. That's when you fall in the hole. That's when you drive off of the bridge that has no span on it. That's when you end up taking the wrong medicine out of the cabinet because you didn't notice which one was which. Ignorance is deadly. It's not bliss. Scoffers delight in their scoffing. That's these. By the way, you do know there is a whole section in the New Testament about wise and foolish. Corinthians, speaks about the wisdom of the world and the wisdom of God. We don't have time to go there, but it's definitely worth using as a commentary on the book of Proverbs. Scoffers delight in their scoffing. Think of a panel on TV. That's what I'm thinking of when I think of this. And they're all elite sophisticates from Ivy League schools. Now, this is not a characterization of everyone who graduated from Harvard. But it's a reality that we better understand. Bless those pheasants. Oh, no, peasants. Those peasants' little bony heads. They don't know, but we'll try to lead them as far as their little minds will carry them. Let their little superstitions be fine as long as they don't bother anybody. That means any of us who know better. That's the kind of thing that's a 2024 application of this. And of course, fools, they just hate. Strong word. This is not one of those hates that's love less. No, this is venomous. This is vitriolic. It's from the gut. They hate the idea of knowledge. Verse 23, if, right away we've got conditional. I know it's not popular with the kind of group that we just mentioned, and we'll develop that a little more as the clock ticks. But God does just not throw out stuff. No matter what you do, it's all good. Because I'm a loving God and I'll just take care of you no matter what you do. So how did that work in the Garden of Eden? The same God who walked with them. That to me is one of the most beautiful pictures. I can't imagine what that's like. But in the shade of the evening, God walked with Adam and Eve through the garden and they talked. That sends chills up and down my spine just thinking about that notion. That's fantastic. But it was conditional. It wasn't like you just do as you please, and because I'm a loving God and I'll put up with anything. No. From page 1 to page X in your Bible, it is bluntly laid out that God does have requirements. And if you've been in my classes before, you know I'm full of these little old short sayings that to me comprise the essence of a big concept. So get ready to hear it again. Remember, old people tend to repeat themselves. By definition, God is always right. By definition, God is always right. Every single word in that short homemade saying is a blunt description of how we need to view God and who God is. God is God. He is not someone that we make deals with. He's not someone that we can question seriously and think basically we can correct him. And we better be ultra careful, like is being done by the scoffers of our world, and calling God's words like harsh. I cringe when I hear that one. Well, that was kind of harsh on God's part. Wash your mouth out. God is God. I'm a little tiny speck of a speck of a speck in a creation that he just spoke, and it was there. And I'm going to argue with God. Let's imagine a giant 1,000 feet tall, 3 football fields long, tall. And I'm up there saying, you better be careful. Does that make any sense? You be really careful about stuff like that. This is an if. If you turn at my reproof, it's conditional. Reproof is a theme of Proverbs. Over and over again, we're told, hug the necks, my phrase, hug the necks of those who care enough about you to try to keep you on track. And the chief of those would be God. Over and over again, he's trying to keep us on track. All scripture, well, you know that one, don't you? It's inspired by God and it's profitable. And it does seem like one of those had reproof in it, didn't it? I think that was one of those on the list. Yeah, I think so. If you turn at my reproof, behold, I'll pour out my spirit to you. I'll make my words known to you. I will make you wise. If you are one of those people that have let your culture bite you, and now you're infected, pay very close attention to the rest of this, though. If you're a marker, and at the end of the chapter, I'll try to go back and just make another comment about marking. But look at the becauses. Because. 25 starts, 24 starts because. 25 starts because. 29 starts because. Those, not to be light about it, those are causes for something. If your mind operates kind of like mine does, then you're thinking the other shoe's going to drop, and there is a cause, and then there is effect. So there will be an effect coming up. But here is the argument. Okay, I don't have to tell you why, because I'm God, God says. But because you did this, because you didn't do that, because I have called you, does that not sound like what we said earlier about wisdom? Hollering and screaming in the alleyways and in the gates. Wisdom's not trying to hide. Wisdom saying, here I am. Here I am. Listen, here I am. I'm not hidden. I'm right here in front of you. Because I've called you and you, A, refuse to listen, have stretched out my hand. When do you stretch out your hand to someone? When you want to help them. When you want to help pull them up. You see me get down in the floor here. Proud to say at my advanced age, I can get down that floor with the best of them. It's getting up that's the hard part. That's when I need the reached out hand, maybe. When we're down and out, I've reached out my hand to you, God says, and no one has heeded, because you've ignored all my counsel and would have none of my reproof. Now let's bang, 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 bang it. I've called out. A, you refuse to listen. B, no one is heeded. C, ignored all my counsel. D, would have none of my reproof. I think we've just passed the 3 strikes. Okay, you got to do this. And since I allow it, you did it. But if you think you got by with it, by definition, God is always right. I will also laugh at your calamity. I will mock when terror strikes you. Skip on down to verse 28. Then they will call upon me, but I will not answer. Look at verse 24. Because I've called you. And wisdom, we said earlier, just calling out to everybody. I've called you and I've called you and I've called you and I've called you. God is patient beyond our understanding. Sometimes I disgust myself in so many ways. And one of them is when I ask for forgiveness for the same old stuff over and over again. And I'm thinking, man, I wonder if I've run out of my 490 yet. That's kind of like a Bible joke, as it were. Remember the 70 times 7 of how many times shall we forgive somebody? I think I ran out of my 490 way back yonder somewhere. God is patient beyond our comprehension. But there comes a point of no return. God will finally have enough. Adam and Eve, I enjoyed those evenings when we walked. Why couldn't you let that happen forever? But you wouldn't. So here's what the consequences are for you and every human who will live on the face of this earth till it is destroyed. Does that seem like a little minor thing back there to just eat a piece of a fruit? When God says no, do we think that means maybe? I hope not. When God says Noah's preached and preached and preached and preached and preached to you, and you're laughing at him because you think he's an idiot for building a boat when we've never had rain. They will call upon me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently. Whoa. They'll seek me diligently. Man, this time they're serious. Yeah. Okay. This time I mean it, Lord. And that's from the heart. But they will not find me. Here's that because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. Let's see, verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Weave all the pieces together and books make more sense. It took me a long time to figure that out, and now I'm trying to figure out how to be a better weaver. But that's the way books make sense. Look for the threads and do the weaving, learn, and then apply. And if you are no faster than I am mentally, you'll spend a lifetime trying to work it all out and die not getting it all.